Okay, we're back talking about the problem of evil and suffering. Why does a good God allow evil and suffering? And you can watch the previous things. So now I'm going to deal with the next response from a Christian perspective, and that is that not only does the context of evil and suffering tend to bring us to a point of surrender and turning over the reins of life to trusting in God to save us rather than ourselves. I would say the other thing is that when we talk about evil and suffering, one of the things that we lose sight of the forest for the trees is that we tend to complain about, we complain less about the reality of the universal, which is death. And we tend to focus more on how do we get to death, right? So we complain that, our lives are cut too short, or our lives are full of misery, or there's wicked people that are inflicting damage to us and killing us or whatever. And why does God allow that? But we need to step back and say there's a bigger problem, and that is that no matter how we die, right? We can have a good life here that's relatively comfortable, but we die. We can have a terrible life here full of suffering and pain, and we die. But the bottom line is we die. And so that's a huge, that's the ultimate problem. It's less of a problem how we die and more of an issue that we die. So the Christian worldview provides an answer to that. And that is that, yes, we all die physically, and it gives us an impending universal issue that we've got to deal with, each of us personally, that guess what? We're going to die. And we may die, we may live a comfortable life and die, or we may lead a life of suffering and die, but nonetheless, we die. And we should not be content with that. That should trouble us more than the condition of our life before we die. So, so that's really the root of the objection that we should be dealing with, is death itself. And the Christian answer is that, yes, we all die physically, but we have the promise of living eternally beyond our physical death. And that is the Christian hope of that we are more than just our physical bodies, that we are an immaterial soul, and that we are beings that are both physical and immaterial, and that that we survive our physical death, and ultimately our bodies will be what's called resurrected into a physicality that is now eternal in nature rather than temporary in nature, and we live that eternal resurrected life in the eternal new creation. Okay, so so that's an answer. The Christian perspective is that while we do, each of us die physically, that's not the end of the story, and instead we are resurrected into a new creation that is eternal, and we are eternal. So that's the Christian hope of eternal life. And so so the presence of that ultimate evil, that is death here in this creation, again, is like a schoolmaster giving us kind of an ultimatum for us to consider and ponder our pending universal death, and in that light cry out to God to save us from that death. And he does. He's faithful, and he has a means by which he rescues us from death. So that's the third answer to the problem of evil. Ultimately, it boils down to the problem of death, and God uses death here as a means to call us to seek eternal life with him. Okay? All right.